What is up, everybody? If you're tuning in because Georgia is beating the crap out of TCU, welcome,
Welcome,
welcome.
yeah. Happy to have you.
We are just as ugly. Just to warn you. Here we go. We had some firings today. Lovie Smith is gone. David Culley, last of the year. Lovie Smith, last of the year. I think you and I both said this at the beginning of the season. This is not a surprise firing. This is the Texans flat out missing out on the group that was. Have somebody fill in and now try and get to the group that is coming now. Lovie Smith was a bridge.
The Houston Texans' job was the absolute worst. It was the worst job to take in the entirety of the NFL. It still was dealing with the ghosts of Bill O'Brien. Nick Caserio is one of the worst GMs in football. It was a turd that was waiting to be polished, and Lovie Smith did everything he could to make that team competent, as we saw in the final week of this season. Him being fired is just what else were they going to do? Not only did Lovie Smith go out a winner, he went out costing them the first overall pick, which complicates the shit out of their draft.
It's great.
They went from guaranteeing Bryce Young or CJ Stroud to basically hoping to get – they're going to have to either trade for the first pick and get their guy or just hope the Bears – because the Bears are trading down. They're going to have to either get their guy and trade up, or they're going to have to hope that the guy they want falls, because two is far worse than one in this draft, bar none. Granted, Young and Stroud are both insanely talented players, but it is like a – not 1A, it's 1A, 1B. Depends on how you feel about the individuals. But if they were sold on Young, it's a tough pill to swallow as a franchise.
Yeah, it's funny because I think the stat was everyone who went for it on fourth and like 15 plus this year was like 0-7, and they got a touchdown on 4th and 20. They did everything right to just show that the Colts had one of the most disappointing seasons out of every single franchise in the NFL, barring the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. Like, this Houston Texans season was it was legitimately like it went just like the Jets did whenever they were trying to get Trevor Lawrence, and I feel bad for Texans fans because you guys were so close to getting your like franchise quarterback. I know Davis Mills is pretty cool. He can throw the ball a little bit, but I have all my little sounds. But this one, it feels fitting for the end of the Texans season because, if I were a Texans fan, I wouldn't just be angry. I'd be incredibly sad. So genuinely, that is the final note of the Lovie Smith era in Houston. It's the sad trombone. It's good for him to go out a winner. It's funny because he did coach in Chicago for a while back in the day. It's kind of poetic in a sense that Lovie Smith's final parting gift from Houston is gifting the Chicago Bears the first overall draft pick this year. But yeah, Houston's still a turd waiting to be polished. If they get Bryce Young, great. It's a great centerpiece for the organization. They still don't have much at skill positions. Currently, they're going to have to draft extremely well, and I don't know how well they are going to draft personally. This franchise will need to have a New York Jets 2021 type class, that type of draft to get things rolling in the right direction. Because at least with the Jets, they had the better part of half a decade of mediocrity rolling into 2021. That allowed them to have decent veterans and young upstarts that had high potential to pair with your Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson. The Texans aren't they just aren't there yet. They do have Derek Stingley. They do have some other good young pieces, but they need to get their quarterback, and they need to start adding pieces around him offensively, because outside of Brandon Cooks, who should be gone after this offseason, it's Nico Collins and Chris Moore, and that's nothing compared to what Bryce Young's been throwing to throughout his Alabama days.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, Dameon Pierce will be a good little side piece to go with whoever they get, but I mean, he's not like an all-pro back, but I mean, he had an okay season given what he was surrounded by. They have the second pick. They have the 12th pick via the Browns. This mock has him getting Bryce Young at 2, which I get it. Most mocks aren't going to have trades, but most likely the Bears will get rid of number 1. It's just the best thing for that franchise to do. But it has the Texans taking an offensive tackle at 12, which isn't the worst, but I would not be surprised if you could go out and get like a Jordan Addison or a Jackson Smith or something along, or Quentin Johnston if he fell that far. Just get a piece for your guy, pull like a Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase type thing. I get it. They probably didn't play on the same team, but to get your guy a weapon to start out early and have a decent running back in Dameon Pierce, it's the start of something, and you have multiple picks moving forward.
You want to line up your window. That's the biggest thing. The younger your quarterback is, the more advantageous it'll be to have younger weapons around him, because they're not only cheaper, but you can lock them up on similar timelines. It's like Herbert. It's like the Burrow, Chase, and Higgins type deal. Mm-hmm. Younger players are cheaper to bring onto the team, and if they're cultivated together, they stick around a little bit longer. So, yeah, I think it'd be very advantageous for Houston to target a receiver with their first round pick this year. But at the same time, if the talent falls on defense, you have to go that way, because the defense is not good in Houston. This is a 3 to 4 year job, regardless of who's going to be stepping in. And I don't know many coaches that will have that 4-year leash. Unless a Sean Payton steps in, I don't see a guy they will stick the flag in and say, "Here you go, make it work." Because this is a project.
It would take like a Robert Saleh type performance, like bad 1 year into looking better, almost a playoff team the very next year. But they would have to have a Jets 2021 type draft where you get Sauce Gardner, you get Jermaine Johnson, you get Garrett Wilson in the same round.
Yeah, you bring in Breece Hall in the second. Like it will take a lot.
And the only thing holding that team back is Zach Wilson. If they had Trevor Lawrence, they'd be in the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
And Christmas came late or early. It is the new year, so however you want. But Cliff Kingsbury's gone. Since like week 15 of last year, maybe even earlier than that, I've been saying to fire Cliff Kingsbury. Say whatever. I'm not going to go on another rant again, because you can go on previous episodes. I've ranted about this 100 million times. Arizona has one of the most talented offenses in the league in turn. Just Kyler, DeAndre, Hollywood, Greg Dortch had a decent year. Rondale Moore, James Conner, but their defense is fucking terrible, and their play calling was awful. Cliff Kingsbury is not a head coach. A coordinator, maybe, somewhere. That's probably where he is next, but he's not a head coach. We've seen in college. I don't know what people thought it would translate to in the NFL. I don't know why Arizona gave him an extension. And to say that it's the homework clause in Kyler's thing, or it's because he plays Call of Duty, like, no, that's just not. Kyler's easily a top 5 quarterback in terms of talent, and especially given his size, he's a monster. And you want to say that he's the real problem? He's the only reason why they won any games this year. He won in spite of Cliff Kingsbury, not with Cliff Kingsbury.
If you've known me throughout the course of this podcast and the lifetime of this podcast, you would know that I absolutely loathe Cliff Kingsbury as a play caller, head coach, and not a person. That's a little too much. But he's never been good, never will be good. He's probably a really solid coordinator. He gives off the vibe that he's somewhat creative offensively, but he genuinely isn't. He banks off of talent, and it's earned him a very good amount of money. But he also is the same person that made Patrick Mahomes look like a top 15 pick in college as opposed to the number 1 pick in that draft. I don't know what NFL executives thought, or I don't know what they're going to think moving forward. You have a guy that has dramatically lowered the ceiling of one of the most dynamic players in football over the last 4 years. He's wasted more talent than any head coach I think I've seen in the last half decade. And like I said, in college, he made Patrick Mahomes look like the 4th best quarterback on that board that season, and that's insanity. Patrick Mahomes, once he was freed from the shackles of a Cliff Kingsbury, granted, Andy Reid is a virtuoso of a head coach, Mahomes is the best thing we've seen since sliced bread. Mahomes is transcendent.
Yeah.
And Kyler Murray, I believe, has the talent physically to be transcendent. And I look forward to seeing what Arizona is going to do, whether it be bringing in a new head coach. I would love for Sean Payton to come to Arizona. They have a lot of problems, don't get me wrong. But if there's one team that had a lot of problems for a long time, especially salary cap wise, and they figured it out, was New Orleans. JJ Watt's retiring. That's money off the books. Hopkins is still there. You have James Conner. The defense needs to be overhauled. The defense and the line need to improve. But if Kyler Murray can come back to 90 to 100% of who he was before he got hurt, a guy like Sean Payton can unlock something in that guy. And I think that could be very, very interesting moving forward. I digress. They have to make a choice this offseason. I'm pretty sure they're going to fire the GM. The coach is out. Are they going to blow it up? They just gave Kyler this new contract. Kyler is going to command a haul if they want to move him. I don't think they move him this offseason. I think that's a little too soon. But at some point, they're going to have to answer some calls. Hopkins is only getting older. Hollywood Brown is a really good ad for them. He's on the same timeline as a Kyler. But I think Hopkins is a little too old for how good this team is supposed to be in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, somebody told me that Sean Payton wanted to go to more of a completed project, and I don't think Arizona is that far off from a completed project. Like, the offense is pretty solid. Like, it could use a couple line pieces, but Kyler has been so dynamic that he generally gets out of sacks, runs for his life.
Genuinely, I think it was 2020, the first year they had Hopkins, that team looked like a competent franchise. Like I vividly remember Kyler's Hail Mary to Hopkins against the Bills. And the
That was
Bills have
sweet.
been one of the biggest juggernauts in football for the last 2 years now. And Kyler was able to go toe-to-toe with those level of offenses. Granted, they've gotten only better since that game, but that's a testament to how good Kyler Murray is. And fun fact, the parting gift of Cliff Kingsbury is far sweeter than the parting gift of Lovie Smith. The Cardinals have a top 3 draft pick,
Yep.
which does not happen whenever you have a quarterback of his stature, usually. Good NFL teams hardly pick in the top 5, let alone like the top 10. So the Cardinals having a top 3 pick, they could go a majority of ways here. And I think they're going to go for a defensive tackle to replace J.J. Watt, which would make the most sense. I
Jalen
look forward.
Carter or Will Anderson looks to be your guy.
If a Will Anderson could fall to them, if they get Carter or Anderson, that is literally beautiful for them because they were mocked at like 5 before the end of the season, and they were slated to get like Brian Brees out of Clemson. And while he is a very talented player, there is a 2-person class for line defenders in this class, and Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. If they can get one of those 2 dudes, I think they will be over the moon. And if the Bears trade down to somebody else, I think they can get the pick of those 2 because
Yeah,
I
they
could
they
see
110% can.
Indy or Seattle could trade up to 1. And then if if the Bears trade down to 2 and the Texans move up 1 spot, the Cardinals should just pick from the next 2. So I genuinely feel the Cardinals have the best spot in the draft. They are going to probably get the best defender in this draft with how I see it possibly going.
I agree because I feel like the Bears are in one of the most advantageous positions to where they have all the leverage in the world. They could not move.
They could just take Will Anderson, yeah.
They could just take Will Anderson and just be like, okay, whatever. But somebody's going to be desperate enough to be like, I can get Bryce Young. Like, I can get Bryce Young for, it's going to cost a lot. Don't get me wrong, but that's what I'm saying for the Bears. The Bears can command a lot for this first round pick. And if they sell it, most likely selling it to a Bryce Young team. CJ Stroud or Will Levis goes 2, and you have Will Anderson at 3 for the Cardinals.
I genuinely think the Bears could get a haul from the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are
100%.
picking at number 4. So technically the Colts should just have their pick of the litter if everything were to fall, if nobody trades. But if the Colts want Bryce Young and they're sold on Bryce Young, they're going to be willing to give up a lot to go to number 1.
And
because Jim Irsay is an aggressive owner. Jim Irsay does not play just to play the game. He plays for keeps. So I think the Colts are going to come out swinging unless they're really implicated with Derek Carr, but I don't understand doing the same thing over and over again and not
Right.
believing in insanity. It just doesn't make sense to me. The Seahawks probably don't trade up because of Geno Smith. I think the Seahawks at 5, they either hope that a CJ Stroud falls to them, because if CJ's there, they're going to draft CJ Stroud. Outside of CJ or Bryce, I don't think they're going to take a quarterback here. I think they'd probably go edge. The Lions, this is interesting. They're not going to trade up to get a quarterback. Jared Goff is perfectly fine. Number 7. Number 7 is where I could see the biggest package going towards the
Raiders
Bears.
could definitely move up.
I think if Derek Carr is gone, we all seem to believe Derek Carr's days as a Raider are numbered. If Derek Carr is gone, I'm not fully sold on Davante Adams sticking around. So the Raiders don't have a whole lot of first-round picks to part with anyways. The Bears need a receiver. The Bears are dying for a number 1 receiver. Granted, Davante may be a little old for the timeline for the Bears, but I think I don't know if Davante gets moved in a deal like that, but I don't know. I feel like Vegas has a lot of really nice pieces on offense, and they do have some solid defenders sprinkled throughout. Vegas is probably out of contention because of the lack of draft capital they'd still have after the Adams trade.
I mean, Vegas
it would have
like
to be
the best team to blow it up.
Yeah,
they
best team to blow it up.
Realistically, blow it up and get draft capital.
I don't think they have the assets to send to the Chicago Bears for the first pick, because I think the Colts have less first rounders tied up in the next couple of years. I think if you believe the Raiders are going to suck, you could take first rounders 2-3 years from now. But they gave up their next. Let me see what the Davante Adams details were.
So you don't think the number 7 pick and Davante Adams is enough?
They would have it. So the Raiders current. So let me just look at Raiders first round picks. I don't think they
have any.
I don't think they're going to move Davante Adams. I don't think they can afford to move Davante Adams. Do the Raiders have a 2023 first round pick? They have 2 picks. No.
Honestly, the only other 2 teams, while we pull off Vegas for a minute, and I'm going to get a little crazy here. It wouldn't surprise me if the Panthers did it. I don't think they will, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Panthers went and got a guy. And a team that I think should do it, but I know they won't after what they did last year, is Tennessee. Tennessee has an aging Ryan Tannehill. How old is Ryan Tannehill at this point? Let's find out.
It's 31.
34.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, no, he's old.
And his birthday is July. So this coming next season will be his age 35 season. He's been hurt the past couple years, multiple times. Malik Willis didn't show shit. Malik Willis looked bad. Who's to say the Titans don't go and get a guy?
11-1 is going to take
I'm aware.
Herculean amount of draft capital. Like, the rookie. Because the thing is, I feel like a lot of Bears fans are shooting for the moon whenever it comes to trading out of the first overall pick. And Bryce Young is an incredibly talented player. I don't expect any type of Ricky Williams type deal for the Bears' first overall pick. It's just, we're never going to see that happen again. There's not a single player who is worth that much draft capital. So they're going to have to get an impact piece or a young, up-and-coming star-type player, something like that. Because I wouldn't want a Derrick Henry. If I'm the Bears, I would take Davante Adams. Obviously, he's a superstar player. They have a ton of cap space. He's north of 30. He's over 30 years old. Their window obviously could be sooner than we think it is, with Aaron Rodgers possibly no longer being a Packer. But I think Indy's in the driver's seat for trading up to first. If I had to rank the teams that are probably going to try and take their stab at Bryce Young if the Bears do trade down, unless you have a team like the Cardinals that wants to get squirrely and take Will Anderson one, or if the Seahawks traded up, they're going after Will Anderson. That's the play they're making. You know what I'm saying? I just
don't think it'd be worth it.
Exactly. And I think Bryce Young is incredibly talented. CJ Stroud is also incredibly talented. I feel like the Bears' first overall pick might be a year short or a year early. If they had the first overall pick in next year's draft when Caleb Williams is coming out, unless he craters this coming year in college, I think that is one of those picks you hold for ransom and you milk somebody for everything they've got. That's going to be interesting. But there's three teams that I think if I had to rank them, it's going to be Indianapolis, Vegas, and then we'll throw in Carolina, I guess. Those are my top three teams that could trade up. I think the most likely is Indianapolis unless they're sold on card.
I know we fell into the draft a little bit, but that's just what happens with trying to improve teams with head coaches and players and this and that. Carolina, I think, is going to keep Steve Wilkes. I think the players want Steve Wilkes to stay.
There's no reason
that's
not
what I've
to.
heard.
The team sucks. They're not improving in a fast rate.
They played well under Steve Wilkes, given what they were with Sam Darnold. They did not play bad under Steve Wilkes.
That was one of the worst interim jobs to get out of the entire season. That team is in disarray.
Denver, obviously, Nathaniel Hackett didn't make it a year. They're talking to Sean Payton. I could see them moving capital for Sean Payton, but what capital do they have left? I think from what I've heard, the Saints want a first-round pick. That's a steep price, and they don't have a first-round pick. Do they have a first-round pick next year?
Denver, they should, I think. Denver, at this point, has to go for Sean Payton. You're already in this deep. You're already paying Nathaniel Hackett for the next 3 years, whatever the hell it is.
I guess when you look at all the candidates, they are the most completed project.
If they're not going after Sean Payton, you pay Dan Quinn a blank check and you say, hey, this is your team. He is the only guy I think coming off of this offseason besides Jim Harbaugh that I have any relative trust in, besides maybe an Eric Bieniemy, but I haven't seen him outside of Mahomes, so I'm not going to speak upon that. But Dan Quinn should be their be-all, end-all because if they don't want to move capital, Dan Quinn is the best candidate, especially for what they're going to need to be moving forward. I think Hackett got a little cute offensively. He wanted it to be – I don't know what he wanted offensively for that team. I think he was just in too deep. I think the Broncos wanted Aaron Rodgers with Nathaniel Hackett, and that never materialized. So I just think Russ really excels when the defense is great and he can be himself with the strong running game. They have the pieces to have a strong running game with Javonte Williams coming back, and they can add a piece in the draft to kind of spell him of some of those early season issues because he's coming back from the knee injury. They have Sutton. They have Hamler. They have Patrick. They have Judy. Their tight ends are passable. Russell Wilson hopefully can be a top 15 quarterback for the lifetime of this contract. We'll have to see it to believe it. But Russ performs better when he has a good defense behind him. Historically, it's what we've seen. His best Seattle teams had insanely good defenses. You bring in Dan Quinn. He hires a good offensive coordinator. You go from there because you're committed to Russ. There's no Derek Carr out with this contract. You owe him $50 million next year, even if you cut him. So year by year until he's 40 years old, you're going to have a fat cap hit. So just eat it for now. You're going to have to try and compete. So figure it out. You're lucky enough that Pat Surtain has turned into a top 5 corner. Just figure it out. That's all you can do. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the owners are like cash poor either. This is like, isn't it like the Walmart people that bought the Broncos or something? They're like,
if I remember right,
billionaire rich. So eat the cost. You've already invested all this money and you need to compete now because Russ is going to be 40 by the time the contract's over. You got to double down, which could be the Sean Payton thing, but draft capital is far more important for how this team will age outside of the Russ thing.
I had the Rams on here about firings on the horizon, but that's more of Sean McVay, whether he's going to leave
stepping
or not.
Down. Yeah.
So we won't get into that too much. We're going to save Brandon Staley for when we get to your Chargers.
He's not getting fired.
I don't know. Like we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll get to your team because I know you have a lot to say, but boy, is he rubbing me the wrong way. So I'll just ask you 3 quick questions, and we'll move on to Super Wildcard Weekend. Is Matt LaFleur getting fired?
No.
Is Dennis Allen getting fired? I guess
no.
Should he be fired? Should.
Yeah, but no. Dennis Allen's not going to be fired. I think it's come out that Arthur Smith and Dennis Allen's jobs are both safe. I think Todd Bowles' job is safe for this season. I think the NFC South, for as bad as it was for a majority of the year, the teams weren't that bad. It's not like they were the AFC South. Like, you had 3, 7, and 10 teams. It was just a lot of ugly football, but I don't think
It
anybody
really
won this
was.
division. Someone just lost a little less. So I don't think any of the NFC South coaches get fired this year. I think they could all be on the chopping block by midseason next year, but it's too early to cut ties with any of those three.
I mean, and I know he played against backups for the most part, but Desmond Ritter, 19 for 30, 224, 2 touchdowns. That's something. They can get Kyle
But
Pitts back. Tyler Algier looks a little better. Drake London.
Calvin Ridley. Oh wait, that's Trevor Lawrence's buddy now.
Oh, super awkward.
Yeah, awkward. No, but yeah, like I think New Orleans, Atlanta, everybody in the NFC South is safe. And LaFleur getting fired after his first bad season in his coaching career would be absolutely insane with how bad coaches are a lot of the time. Like, there's more misses than there are hits. And any hits that you do see nowadays are coaches that either coached 5 years before in the league or were on a different team and just swapped over to a different one. Like, Mike McCarthy's the best head coach the Cowboys have had since Jimmy Johnson, for lack of better terms, in terms of overall record, unless you count Jason Garrett above him because of the longevity.
Overall record, sure.
But you get what I'm saying. Like, more often than not, the contingency of head coaches either come from upstart coordinators or coaches that were in a different spot. There's not a whole lot of burgeoning, successful college guys coming up to coach in the pros. Matt Rule, Cliff Kingsbury, the list goes on. It does not translate. Nick Saban was terrible in Miami, and he ran back to the NCAA. Like, coaching NFL and NCAA are two different things, and they will never fully translate because you can't pay the players legally in the NCAA, and the leverage is completely different.
Okay, Super Wild Card Weekend. We'll just start in the order of the games and how they are. So the first game we get on Saturday is the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. The Seahawks play an absolute thriller with the Rams. A little too close for comfort, but they got through it. Geno, 213, a touchdown, 2 picks. Kenneth Walker, 29 for 114. He showed up pretty well against one of the better rushing defenses in the league. Tyler Lockett led in receiving, 4 receptions, 54 yards. Jason Myers missing a kick with time expiring. Made a little spooky, but they did need help. They did get the win in overtime after Quandre Diggs got a pick to kind of seal it for the most part. And Jason Myers hit that kick in overtime. But they did get a little help from the Lions beating Green Bay in Sunday Night Football. Is that the last time we may see Rodgers in a Packers jersey? Who knows? And San Francisco kind of dominated Arizona. No surprise whatsoever. I think you and I can both sit here and say that we're just kind of expecting San Francisco to wipe the floor with Seattle. Seattle's been very surprising this year. Nobody expected them to win more than 5 or 6 games with Geno Smith. Geno Smith has been kind of down the line, but he was really good to get to this point, get this team to this point. Kenneth Walker, after Rashad Penny going down, has been a breath of fresh air. He hasn't been, like, oh my God, Breece Hall, but he's been pretty good. I like him a lot. What do you got?
Seattle season, I had them in the front runner's position to land Bryce Young to start the season. I thought Seattle was picking in the top 3, and it wasn't going to be because of that Denver pick. I'll eat the sour grapes, dude. Seattle came out and they played a hell of a season. It had its ups and downs, but they maintained a steady ship for the most part. What I thought was going to be one of the worst defensive units in football was actually relatively passable for a majority of this season. Quandre Diggs against not his former team, but he was a former Detroit Lion, ending the Lions season by getting that game-saving interception off of Baker Mayfield. I think Seattle is a great story. I think the career of Geno Smith has been extended by 5 years due to this season. I think they're out of their depth against San Francisco, especially playing them at home. But I commend Pete Carroll. We thought he was done after Russ was leaving. You and I were very low on Pete Carroll. Granted, half of Seattle didn't want Pete to be there. We didn't think there was enough juicy fruit in the world. But I think the factory just reopened because Pete's going to be chewing for a little bit longer. It's just tough. Nobody really saw Seattle coming out like this. I'm really happy they made the playoffs, especially after losing their franchise cornerstone in the way that they did. If I were a Seattle fan, I wouldn't feel too hot about
Who,
how the
Jamal
Russell
Adams?
Wilson. No, the Russell Wilson thing.
Ooh.
But I like Seattle this year. I like them probably moving forward into next year. I think if Matthew Stafford's elbow is never the same, I think we're looking at Seattle as possibly the number 2 team in
In
they're
the
probably
West?
yeah. I think
Yeah, I
so.
mean, I don't think you're too far off there if the Rams, they'll get Stafford back, they'll get cut back, but is McVay going to be back? Is Stafford going to be the same? Stafford is beat up at this point in his career. If Seattle was really playing anybody else, if they were playing Tampa, if they were playing Minnesota, I would feel a little bit better about Seattle. They haven't been playing good down the stretch, so that's kind of hurting them a little bit. But against San Francisco, you're just completely outmatched in every facet of the game. You name a position, they're beat at it. There is not one spot where I could see Seattle winning this game.
The one way I see Seattle having a shot to win this game is they get into a shootout, because Seattle's defense isn't as strong as San Francisco's. But what Jarrett Stidham showed us 2 weeks ago is that the Niners defense can be passed on to a certain extent. Granted, Devontae Adams is an absolute monster, but you're going to have to win in a shootout. You are going to have to make Brock Purdy keep pace, which he was able to do against the Vegas Raiders. And I think he would be able to do with the weapons he has around him on the Niners. You have to get to the defense and you have to make them play. You have to make the Niners play from behind, because if you give San Francisco a lead, they're not going to give it up. Christian McCaffrey is a top 2 running back in football, and he might not be number 2 at this point. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle is one of the best receiving trios in all of football. You sprinkle in Jawan Jennings, Ray McLeod. It is a deep team offensively, and they have the best left tackle in football, and Trent Williams out there protecting Brock Purdy's blind side. All Purdy has to do is be Jimmy plus, and in this week he could just be Jimmy Garoppolo, and they win this game. Purdy just can't make mistakes. If Purdy's making mistakes, this game could be closer than it should be. And if it's closer than it should be, Pete Carroll is a competent head coach. And I think Kyle Shanahan's a better coach right now. But division rivals, close games, if I'm a Niners fan and it's close, I don't feel good. Because I think the last time they saw each other in a NFC playoff, they tried Sherman. They tried Sherman with a receiver, sorry ass, and Crabtree, and that didn't go well.
Poor Aaron Andrews got yelled at in her ear.
Yeah, dude, it's gonna be a hell of a game. I think there's not a better matchup to kick off the playoffs with. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. Even if the Niners blow them out, it's going to be hard fought, because Seattle is not going to roll over. They proved that last Sunday.
Yeah. All right. Finishing off Saturday is the Los Angeles Chargers going down to Florida, take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chargers, locked into the 5th seed, still played their starters against Denver. We'll get into that. Jacksonville on Saturday night snatched a victory from the jaws of defeat with a fumble return touchdown, forced Joshua Dobbs to beat him, and he just flat did not. Jacksonville caught Tennessee at a poor time, beat them, and now they're heading to the playoffs after a 3-14 year with Urban Meyer. Doug Peterson got them 9-8, got them the AFC South title. Now they're hosting a playoff game, but they're hosting one of the hotter teams in football, right, Devin?
This is probably the matchup of the playoffs. This is as good as the Niners are. This is the matchup of the weekend, in my opinion. Jacksonville's about as hot as anybody in the NFL. The Chargers were about as hot as anybody in the NFL. We rested starters after the first half, or after the third quarter against the Broncos. It was a game that we didn't need to win because Baltimore didn't hold up there. They held up their end for the Chargers' sake. Mike Williams went out of the game and was carted off due to a back injury in this matchup, and I believe Joey Bosa also limped off the field at one point against the Broncos. If the Chargers are not fully healthy, Jacksonville scares the absolute piss out of me. Doug Peterson's probably a better coach than Brandon Staley right now. Herbert's a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence as of current standing. I'll take Eckler over ETN. I will take the receivers when healthy over what Jacksonville has. The Chargers just need to be healthy. Jacksonville kicked the shit out of us earlier in the year. If I'm correct, that was the first week of Herbert playing with broken ribs. So both of these teams are diametrically different compared to whenever they first matched up. I'm picking the Chargers in this contest, but Staley has to hope that Mike Williams can go. Because if Mike Williams can't go, this offense is completely different. Mike Williams takes the top off of the offense in a way that Keenan can't, and even a guy like Palmer really has trouble doing. If Jalen Guyton was healthy, he blew his ACL early in the year, I believe, last week of preseason. If he was here, it wouldn't hurt as bad to not have Mike, but Mike is that vertical spacer in a way we just don't have without him. I think it's going to be high scoring. If a big thing about last week's game as well is Derwin James. I don't know if he played. I know he was listed with concussion symptoms. So I'm just hoping we can be healthy in this playoff matchup. If we can protect Herbert, I'll take us against anybody in the AFC right now outside of maybe Kansas City. It's going to be a hell of a matchup. It's probably a coin flip at this point, especially if Mike Williams can't play. If Herbert loses to Trevor Lawrence, I'm going to have an offseason of just hearing shit about how Herbert's not top 5. And I'll be like, shut the fuck up, please. I don't want to hear this. Winning is not a quarterback stat. I don't care what anybody says. There's 52 men on the roster, plus coordinators, position coaches, practice squad players, a lot of moving parts. So talk to a wall, but it's going to be a hell of a game. It'd be really disappointing to see the season cut short because of some boneheaded calls in week 18. But if we're healthy and good to go, I think this Chargers team could run with the best of them. And I don't think the loss in week 18 really curtails any momentum they truly had. I think they realized that we didn't have to win that game. Losing that game does not really impede us in any way. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Chargers come out. They're the headliner on Saturday. So they need to come out and they need to prove it. And I'm hoping Lombardi has his A game set up, because if Lombardi's going to be calling how he was for the first half of the season, we're going to get blown out. But if he opens the playbook and we actually move the ball the way I know we can move the ball, I think the Chargers could win this game. Would it be by 15? Probably not, but I think they could probably beat them by a touchdown.
It's the most down the middle game of the weekend, and it's not particularly close in terms of evenly matched teams, but there is no reason why Herbert should have thrown the ball 37 times. There's no reason why Keenan Allen should have 8 catches for 102 yards. Honestly, Austin Eckler shouldn't have had 15 touches. I don't. If it looks like Mike Williams is going to play, they said the MRI is negative. They said it's back spasms. It's a contusion, that he's going to be fine. But if Mike Williams and Joey Bosa somehow don't play this game and you are one and done, that is a fireable offense, in my opinion. That is absolutely completely boneheaded. Maybe Herbert plays a series, maybe 2 or 3, but 37 throws is ridiculous.
Yeah, I understand that. If Herbert went down in that game, he's fired regardless. Herbert 100%. Not going down. Mike Williams getting hurt sucks. Joey Bosa limping off sucks. Herbert's upright and Herbert's healthy. That's basically all that matters. Because even if we go 1 and out, if Mike Williams didn't play, it's a sour taste in our mouths. But this season was lost after about week 6. The fact that this team is in the playoffs to date as the 5 seed is a testament to the just the fortitude of the unit as a whole, and it would be disingenuous to not credit Staley to a certain extent. Because this team 5 years ago, we lose J.C. Jackson, we lose Rashawn Slater. This team goes fucking. This literally happened in 2018 or in 2019. The team went. We had a top 6 pick. This season could have easily been just like that, but it didn't. This team started out. Let me just look at the Chargers record. So I think Staley's job is safe. I don't think the Chargers are going to fire him. I think Tom Telesco could be on the chopping block in the next year or 2. I don't think he should be. But so the Chargers they started out the season 1-2.
But would you fire Brandon Staley if Sean Payton said, let's fucking go?
No. I'm not moving draft capital to bring in Sean Payton. Because Sean Payton's not going to fire Joe Lombardi. The biggest problem with the Chargers offense this year has been the coordinator. I don't think Brandon Staley's calling plays. I think Joe Lombardi's conservative play calling has cost us games multiple times throughout the season. He turned Herbert away from this gunslinging, deep ball throwing player that's able to move the offense in insurmountable ways into this guy that's been checking down or throwing the ball. Like the route trees were so damn shallow for a majority of the year. It makes sense why we were not able to move the ball down the field. It makes sense why we couldn't score past the third quarter. Like, these are the things that Lombardi was doing throughout the season. And I'm not going to bring on a Sean Payton if that means we're going to have to deal with Lombardi for the lifetime of his deal there. It makes no sense to trade away future draft assets because we have the quarterback. We're going to need our top 20 to top 15 draft picks moving forward with Herbert, point blank. We're going to need that pick 17, that pick 18, that pick 25 in drafts to supplement talent around our stars. Because Keenan and Mike are on the older side of the Herbert window. Eckler, older side of the Herbert window. Currently, our window is resting on the backs of Joey, Derwin, Slater, Herbert. Those are the key four as of right now. And Keenan and Mike are going to be here for they're going to be here for the lifetime of their contract. Same with Austin Eckler. But the team is going to be drastically different 3 years into Herbert's mega deal. And that's why we can't move valuable draft capital to bring in a coach. Because I don't think, well, I do understand that a coach can really unlock something for a team. But in the same vein, I think Herbert's a good enough quarterback to where you don't need the right coach. You just need a good coach with him. But then again, the Chargers never won a Super Bowl, so I'm not speaking from experience. But in the same vein, Brady went from Belichick to Arians and he won a bowl that same year. Coaching is important, but I don't think there's many guys that you slot with the top 5 quarterback and they guarantee you a championship. And I don't think Sean Payton's that guy because he never really was. He got a Super Bowl with Breeze against Peyton Manning, and that won Super Bowl, and then they came up short for the next decade and a half.
So do you think there is maybe not a canyon, but do you think there's a large gap between Andy Reid and Sean Payton?
I would say so, yeah. I'd say the gap is pretty big. Like, Sean Payton's a good head coach.
Here's why I asked that. Because your division rival has their quarterback for the next 80 fucking years. They have their head coach till he dies. And if Sean Payton was anywhere close in your mind to Andy Reid, why would you not go after that model? Why would you not? You have your quarterback for the next 80 years. So you would obviously, you would like Justin Herbert to start and die as a Los Angeles Charger. If Sean Payton was anywhere near Andy Reid, in your opinion, why would you not copy what Kansas City is doing? But if you feel there is a significant gap between them, and I understand your draft capital argument, then yes, I understand why you wouldn't want to move capital for Sean Payton. And I get there's probably only one Andy Reid in our lifetime, but you got to get somewhere close.
Well, a big thing for me is Sean Payton. To me, I think he's a better coach than Mike McCarthy, but I subscribe to the belief that he's kind of like a Mike McCarthy in terms of the grand scheme of how we're going to perceive him at the end of the day.
Okay, I'm a better coach than Mike McCarthy here. Come on.
Mike McCarthy's a Super Bowl champion coach, regardless of how you cut it. Same with Sean Payton. Sean Payton's a more talented coach. Am I wrong?
No, that's the problem.
Yeah. But hear me out. So Andy Reid has coached in the NFL for 24 years. His win percentage over 24 years is .641. Sean Payton's coached for 15 years, and he hasn't coached since 2021. .631 is his win percentage. He has one Super Bowl championship and no other conference championships. Andy Reid has 3 conference championships and a Super Bowl, and he's probably going to get another one in the next year or two. Like, because I can't tell you that Sean Payton hasn't had the same talent as Andy Reid, because that would be stupid. That would be downright dumb. Sean Payton has had incredibly talented teams, but for some reason it hasn't worked out. Whether it's his fault or somebody else's fault, it's not my business. I don't care. I would much rather tie my wagon to somebody after the Staley era that's offensive minded. If we could find the next up and coming coordinator and bring him in, because personally, Staley got brought in off of that Rams team with Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, great defensive mind, aided by an incredibly elite defensive talent pool. Granted, we have elite defensive talent, and it's translated this year, which is great. You love to see that happen. And it's not like Hackett, where he said, oh my God, he's transcended. No, Aaron Rodgers is generational. Hackett is just the beneficiary of generational talent. That's the point. Because I know Sean Payton's not the after effects of generational talent. I think Breeze helped Peyton and Peyton helped Breeze, because Breeze never won without Sean Payton and Peyton never won without Drew Brees. But you get what I'm saying, right? But I don't think Sean Payton puts us over the top to win a Super Bowl. I just don't. I don't think his play calling in today's NFL really is going to win you a Super Bowl more often than not. I think roster construction is the first and foremost important part, and then health shortly after, because the players are all super talented. The data's there. You can look at the numbers. You can have the feel for the game. A lot of the time, the best team doesn't fucking win. That's the thing about this sport. It's a one-game playoff each round.
Right.
So the variance is always going to be there. But giving up a first rounder for a guy who hasn't coached in 2 years in a league that is constantly changing, give me a fresh mind. Give me a younger guy. Give me somebody from the Shanahan coaching tree. Because for all the failures we see,
or you can get this guy, Matt Patricia, from the Belichick tree.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I'd rather give somebody fresh and new a shot as opposed to somebody that we've seen do it before. And like, you get what I'm saying? Like Josh McDaniels, who the fuck wanted to hire him? Obviously, Peyton's more attractive as a coach because he wasn't a loser like Josh McDaniels is and continues to be. But I don't think Peyton's the answer. I'm happy we never hired Urban. If we had hired Urban Meyer 2 years ago and he was our head coach, then we were looking for a coach, I would have given up 3 first rounders for Sean Payton. But I don't think Brandon Staley is that bad that we have to trade away first rounders to get somebody else besides him.
I remember when we were on the cusp of firing Jason Garrett and the Cowboys were like, maybe Urban Meyer. And I was like, okay, maybe, why not? Oh, Lordy almighty. Mike McCarthy, you are a godsend compared to that man. Good Lord. Well, call as many non-timeouts as you want, friendo.
Let me look up Mike McCarthy for you real quick. He's been coaching for 22 years. Well, no, he's been coaching for 16 years. So 16 years as a head coach, Super Bowl champion.
How long did he spend in Green Bay?
From 2006 until 2018. So he has coached for
I did not
one more. He's coached for 1 full year over Sean Payton. He has 155 career wins. His win percentage is .614. Sean Payton has 152 wins, and his win percentage is .631. The gap between Payton and McCarthy isn't that wide.
And honestly, Mike McCarthy probably has a better winning percentage if he has Dak Prescott for every single game that he's coached as a Dallas Cowboy.
Yeah, he went 6-10 his first year as a Cowboys head coach, and that was without Dak for a majority of the year.
Yep.
So,
and he's been without Dak 5 games this year. Granted, we won 4 of them, but then we missed Dak last year, and I think we won that game too. But still,
for as much shit as we've talked about Mike McCarthy, the gap between McCarthy and Payton is closer than the gap, I would say, between Andy Reid and Sean Payton.
Sure.
So, love you, Austin. I don't want to be Dallas West personally. I could not deal with that as a Chargers fan. I don't want.
It's brutal, friend. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Not that I don't want Sean Payton. I'm not willing to give up what the Saints want to have Sean Payton. If we could sign him outright, maybe. But trading for a guy like that, it takes a special coach to be willing to part with draft capital to get Andy Reid's, a Bill Belichick, which would never happen. Like, that's the level of guy you're looking to get.
We'll get to the Cowboys towards the end, but fuck, I'd be willing to give up capital. But I think the coaching staff might blow up soon. It's weird out in Dallas. We'll get to it though.
Dan Quinn is gone, dude. Dan Quinn's going to be a head coach. I think Dan Quinn has his name written on it.
Dan Quinn is gone because the defense is negatively regressing. That's the only reason why he's gone. If we were still the elite defense we were last year, and granted, the stats say we're still one of the more elite defenses throughout, all 17 games this year, but the defense has significantly regressed the past 5 games, I think even more. And that's why Dan Quinn will leave. Because
Yeah.
Dan Quinn didn't leave last year because we were this all-world defense, and Dan Quinn was like, "Look what I just did! Like I turned a team that hasn't had a defense in 20 fucking years into this. But now that we're negatively regressing, he can hightail it on out of here."
Hmm.
I don't particularly love Kellen Moore. I don't particularly love Mike McCarthy, but I don't think Mike McCarthy is going to go anywhere because technically you can say the Cowboys are playoff chokers and one and done as much as you want, but to at least get to the dance is still something.
Yeah,
To
we
at
haven't been
least
since 2018, so I can't argue with you.
like you and I are in different situations. I'm constantly losing the playoffs, but you're not getting there. So it's like, which one do you want? Both are painful. And we'd just rather be Chiefs fans at this point, but okay. We're both picking the Chargers.
Oh yeah, dude. We're in the dance. I'm not going to pick against them until they're looking towards the NFL draft. There's just no way. They were my preseason pick. I'm not going to.
Neither winner surprises me though.
Yeah. Jacksonville has as much of a chance to win this game as the Chargers do have. The Chargers have more veteran players that have been on a playoff team at this point. I'm pretty sure Derwin was a part of that. Yeah. Derwin was a 2018 rookie, if I'm correct. He was the Lamar class. So that would make him 20. Derwin was the class where Lamar Jackson got drafted. Derwin was in the playoffs, if I'm correct, his rookie year. Bosa was in the playoffs. Mike was in the playoffs. Keenan, you name it. We have a lot of guys that have been here. We have a lot of guys that have played in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think that matters. I think Staley's coached in the playoffs. His last time coaching in the playoffs is more recent than Doug Peterson's. So I think experience-wise, the Chargers have an advantage, and that matters.
The Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills will kick off Sunday morning. The Patriots smashed the playoff dreams, or the Bills smashed the Patriots' dreams. Absolutely didn't give a fuck. Sent them home. The Finns got their help with Skylar Thompson. They beat the Jets 9-6 and were able to get in. If Tua doesn't play, the Bills are smashing them. If Tua plays, the Bills are smashing them. I don't see how the Dolphins. That's wrong. I can see how the Dolphins win this game. They're an extremely talented offense with a good-minded head coach, with extremely good skill players. If Tua plays, I give them a real chance to win this game. But I can't pick against the Bills. I picked them week 1 to win the Super Bowl. I think the Buffalo Bills can do it all. Their biggest problem is Josh Allen turning the ball over this year. That's honestly their biggest issue. Granted, their secondary's beat up, but that was their problem last year, and they're not going to get over that hump. They're going to go in a shootout with the Chiefs or the Bengals if they meet them in the championship. But I think they can beat the Dolphins and just easily move on here.
The Bills losing this game, I think, would be the single biggest loss the Bills have had since they lost like 3 straight Super Bowls. 4 straight.
Matt, can you imagine that?
That sucks. I genuinely, the Bills have to win this game. Tua shouldn't touch the field. I know they're trying to prepare for him to play in this game. Tua shouldn't be on the field. 3 concussions in one season is terrifying, and it's something that I don't think any player should ever go through. For as concerned as the NFL has been about Brandon Cooks, I don't think he ever had 3 in a season. I think it's just reckless for Tua to suit up for this game. I understand the implications, and I understand wanting to win, and I get it. It's part of the game. You got to take the guy's health into consideration, because I don't know how many more of these hits he can take, and it's not like this dude's getting fucking clotheslined. Pardon my French. It's not like Tua is getting ear-holed by dudes. He's getting tackled, and his head is whipping back. He's getting pushed and his head is snapping back. Either he needs to, I don't know what changes, because this isn't Tony Romo whenever he broke his back. This is just the way he falls. For some reason, his head is snapping in a way that you don't see with other quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. His head is bouncing off of the turf. It's different sports and it's a different level of the game. The players move a lot faster. But in basketball, I played in high school. Whenever you take a charge, you tuck your chin. Whenever you're taking impact and you're going to be falling backwards, you tuck your chin. So that way, whenever you're falling back, you're not going limp with your body and your head smashing onto the court. And for some reason, I don't know. Yeah, at this point, the concussion issues terrify me for Tua, regardless of how talented he is or how good this team can be. He's only one or two away from it being a really serious discussion because this man's
I
health
mean,
is far more important than any Super Bowl window. Like,
yeah, I mean it's why multiple players have done. It's why across all sports, including the wrestling entertainment business, multiple guys have retired because of concussions after you see what it does to your brain. Your brain is beaten to hell. This is completely different than Tony Romo. Like it's similar in the fact of losing your starting quarterback towards the end of your season. We had that happen multiple times. We threw out Kyle Orton in a must-win game. You know, we threw out Brandon Whedon, John Kitna. We threw out some random ass dudes because Tony Romo was getting beat up. But in terms of, you know, with his back, he'll live with it. He retired kind of early. He is commentating now. He'll be fine. His back is going to hurt like hell when he's older, but he can manage it. Tua can't. You can manage it to an extent, but it changes you as a person, literally. And that's the problem here. And if Tua is going to take, we've had 2 or 3 this season alone. If he has another season like this, it might already be too late. You get an old person shrivel brain. Exactly.
yeah, like I have an article pulled up here from the undroppables.com, and it's showing Brandon Cooks' documented concussions throughout his career. And since 2015, the guy has 5 documented instances of concussions. He had 2 in 2018, 2 in 2019, 1 in 2015. And this article is talking about, like, once you suffer a concussion, you're more susceptible to getting a concussion. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy how it works. And they're talking about in this article, this is 2020, it's being cited. Like, well, Cook's next concussion caused him to hang it up altogether. He is in a high risk category for me heading into 2020. It's that's what we're playing with
Mm-hmm.
because of the nature of the game and how violent it is and how delicate the human brain truly is. The leash is super short, and I don't know how you bring him out. I
Well,
personally think Tua's offseason should have started as soon as the third one hit, because I get trying to win now. I don't think the Dolphins are good enough to win it this year, regardless of if Tua's on the
no.
field. It's not worth the risk. If you want this guy to be your quarterback moving forward, give him the offseason. Let him rest. Let him recuperate and protect him better moving forward. Because if it was a knee type thing, knees heal more nowadays than they ever have. But the brain, there's still so much unknown about it, and there's no real way to fix it.
And the thing, the brain's job is to protect you and protect itself.
Yep.
So the reason why you become more susceptible to concussions is because your brain understands that when you take these hard shots, bad things happen. So when you take those shots more, your brain is like, okay, dude, let's shut it down. Because when I shut it down, it's over. Like I don't hurt anymore. I don't take any more shots. So and the shots become, dudes hit fucking hard these days. Dudes hit hard. That's
Yeah,
why
DeAndre
running
Swift
back.
almost got fucking beheaded against Green Bay, and they threw the flag because Quay Walker pushed the trainer.
Because Quay Walker shoving athletic trainers apparently for the umpteenth time. Good lord. But that's the thing. Like it'll take less and less for Tua to get concussed. Like he can take one tackle and his head might not even snap, but his brain will say, "Time to shut off. Like we're done here."
Wow.
And it's going to hurt Miami significantly because then they have to figure out their quarterback situation along with another team in the AFC East, along with some other teams who are looking at Garoppolo and Carr and the guys coming up in the draft and the guys coming up in the draft after that. So we'll see, but I think we're just both picking Buffalo here, even if Tua sees the field. I think if Tua sees the field, obviously it's a much more competitive game, but I just don't think the Bills are going to let up.
Yeah, no. Buffalo's not only playing for themselves, they're playing for their teammate DeMar Hamlin. This season for them has genuinely been about as tough as anybody's. The snowstorms in Buffalo have been absolutely terrible. These are players that have missed major holidays. The Buffalo Bills season, I don't know if there's a team that has been tried more in terms of just the life off of the field than Buffalo this year. They lost Von Miller. They've been playing a majority of their season without key defensive pieces. Buffalo, due to this heavy winter, has been a hellscape to live in. And then,
good Lord,
cherry on the top of it, DeMar Hamlin. Like, the snowstorms have been insane. People are like dying in Buffalo due to the levels of snow and lack of being able to heat their homes. So, but I don't believe Buffalo can be a one and done this year. I think Buffalo's poised for a deep run in this playoff.
yeah.
And it's going to go as far as their offense takes them, but I don't think Miami's defense
And
is something Buffalo's going to worry about.
And kind of the biggest thing, and I'm going to say this with the caveat of that, no matter the decision the NFL made, I'm caveat with this as well. I'm glad DeMar Hamlin was able to be resuscitated. I'm glad he got the care he needed. And I'm glad DeMar Hamlin is going to be okay for the most part. Obviously, having cardiac arrest is going to change your body a little bit, and his career might be done. But I'm glad DeMar Hamlin's okay. I'm glad the NFL community came together and donated over $8 million to his toy fund that he started back in 2020. That was freaking sweet. The Bills probably, maybe if they beat the Bengals, would be the 1 seed. And maybe they're hosting. But given the situation of what happened and what the NFL did, no matter what decision the NFL made, it was not going to be fair for somebody. It was going to be wrong. It was wronging somebody, this and that. I believe the NFL, I'm taking the stance that the NFL did the best they could in a situation they had never experienced.
It was unprecedented.
In a century.
There was no right answer.
Correct.
The only right answer is DeMar Hamlin being healthy. That's the only saving grace in the situation, is that he is alive and he is able to breathe and live his life.
With saying that, if they get to the AFC Championship, you don't have to go to play in Arrowhead.
Buffalo made out like gangbusters in terms of like
going to a neutral site.
Yeah, like they lost out on the 1 seed, which sucks, but they technically have the 1 seed. All they have to do is get to the championship game, and they are either playing at home, but they're not playing on the road. They will not play a road game in the playoffs if they make the championship game. And if KC falters, they're going to host a home game for the AFC Championship. This is Buffalo's window. This is the best opportunity Buffalo's had in terms of a playoff slate to get to the Super Bowl. Because the last time they played in KC, it was a shootout, and KC got luck of the draw with the ball. Like, home field matters. And I think Buffalo in a neutral site is one of the toughest teams to beat anywhere. Even beating them on the road sounds like a tough task. Like, Buffalo's really good. Josh Allen is insanely good. He's turned the ball over a lot this year, but they're still as good as they've been. And if you are still watching the Georgia Bulldogs football game, congratulations on your second national championship if you're a Georgia fan, because 59-7.
Oh, my God.
TCU came out with 7 points in the first quarter. They have not scored since. Georgia put up 17 in the first, 21 in the second, 14 in the third, and they already have 7 on the board. It is ugly.
Props to TCU for getting there. And I won't get into it too much, but anybody saying blank team would have been a more competitive game, well, they're not, because they didn't make it. That it's as simple as that. You want it to be competitive, have your team make it. It's as simple as that. You can't say Alabama would have been more competitive. Alabama didn't even make the top 4. Okay, they lost games. So, anyways.
I think Ohio State beats TCU. TCU had a season for the ages, and there's nothing to take away from them. Max Duggan had a crazy season. Congratulations to him. I think CJ Stroud probably looks better as the Heisman winner after what happened with USC and Caleb Williams. I was really hoping that Ohio State pulled that thing out, because CJ Stroud was balling. But no, Stetson Bennett stamping his claim to being one of the more memorable college quarterbacks ever. Regardless of how you feel about him as a talented player, 304 and 4 scores in a national championship. You can't ask for more.
Yeah. The Giants of Minnesota. Giants took no risks whatsoever. They were locked in as the 6th seed. They started Davis Webb against Philadelphia. Granted, they could have knocked Philadelphia out of the number 1, but to be honest, that doesn't mean a damn thing to them at all.
Yep.
They were locked in as the 6th. Dallas was locked in as the 5. It's been that way for weeks. Minnesota played for a minute for a few drives. I believe Kirk Cousins threw the ball 20 times. Let me fact check myself here. Kirk Cousins threw the ball 20 times, 17 for 20. They were winning just in case San Francisco lost. It's the only reason why they were playing. So I understand playing those starters for a hot second just to ensure your win. But the second they went up, they were up 16-6 at halftime, and I believe that was pretty much all they needed. Nick Mullins did enough, 11 for 13, 116. Alexander Madison had 2 touchdowns, which is cool. But
yeah,
the Bears have the number 1 overall pick now after a 3-14 season. The record doesn't speak for what I thought Matt Eberflus did with this team. I thought Matt Eberflus had a decent season.
Coach of the year, like borderline. He's not going to win Coach of the Year, but Eberflus deserves recognition for what he did in Chicago. This was a team that, like, starting the year, it was like, geez, man, it got ugly. They traded Khalil Mack. They're not re-signing David Montgomery. There was nothing to look forward to. And Justin Fields said, "Hold my beer. I'm about to break the NFL's rushing record for a quarterback."
He almost
until
did,
he couldn't play in the final week. Yeah, Justin Fields not only it was a perfect season. He showed a lot. Eberflus was able to show that he can command a decent, because this team was competitive in a lot of these games. They weren't getting blown out. Like, the games are far closer than general numbers would tell you. They beat the Patriots.
For the Giants and the Vikings, I feel like,
the Bears beat the Patriots earlier. Yeah, it's just a weird season. I've never felt so good about a team that has the first overall pick, besides maybe Jacksonville's prospects after firing Urban Meyer. But that wasn't the players. That was just the worst situation I'd ever seen. Yeah. The Bears looked terrible.
Do you remember
at
that
times.
Thursday night game against Carson Wentz and the Commanders? Oh, Lordy.
12-7.
And then Justin Fields said, "You know what? I think I'll just do everything myself."
But I'm going to go through their losses. So I know it's off track, but so they had, holy shit, this is crazy. So they beat the Niners week 1. So they lost by 7 to the Vikings. They lost by 5 to the Commanders. Beat the Patriots. Mollywopped by the Cowboys. Lost by 3 to the Dolphins. Lost by 1 to the Lions. Lost by 3 to the Falcons. By 21 to the Jets. By 9 to the Packers. By 5 to the Eagles. This team got blown out in some games, but a lot of their games were far more competitive than you would initially think. And they beat some pretty good teams.
The box score definitely does not say it all.
The 3 wins they had this year, they beat the Patriots, the Niners, and the Texans. They probably beat more playoff teams than some playoff teams this year. Like, in the grand scheme. Like,
Titans went 0-7 against teams over 500.
Literally, like, this Bears team is better than the record indicates. And to get the first pick is like icing on the cake. But speaking of Giants and Minnesota, I feel like this could be one of the closer matchups we see in the first round. I get it. The Vikings are far more talented.
Yes, sir.
The Giants are scrappy, dude. That Giants defense does not care. As Kayvon Thibodeau showed 2 weeks ago whenever he was doing snow angels over the corpse of Nick Foles.
Lordy.
Bad look, but dude's a monster. Absolute stud. If Daniel Jones doesn't make mistakes and the Giants can control the football, Minnesota can be beat. If it's a shootout, Minnesota wins. But if New York controls the ball, this game is closer than anybody's going to feel comfortable with.
I'm going to take out the Chargers in Jacksonville because I don't think either of those teams winning is an upset. Yeah. I think whoever wins there just flat out wins.
Yeah.
Out of every single game this weekend, I think the biggest upset, and hell yeah, dude, there is a thread on Twitter that is going hard right now for Doug Peterson versus Brian Daboll. Some people are throwing Dan Campbell in there, but I'm tossing Dan Campbell out because they missed the playoffs.
Dan Campbell's the Nick Sirianni of this year's Coach of the Year race from last year.
Yeah.
I agree. It should be Daboll. I think Daboll and Peterson might just disqualify each other. And then I'm happy if Shanahan gets it. Because Daboll and Peterson have the exact same resume, for lack of better terms. I think Peterson just has better talent on offense.
Give it to Josh McDaniels. Fuck it. Just blow up the whole award.
Nathaniel Hackett gets Coach of the Year. Cliff Kingsbury is a parting gift. They're like, fuck it. And the coach of the year goes.
You had to put up with Kyler Murray. Here you go.
Yep, Peterson, Dable, and Shanahan. And I think if they're going to be splitting hairs with Dable and Peterson, I think it goes to Shanahan. 10 straight wins, 3 starting quarterbacks, myriad of injuries. He basically had 65% of what Brandon Staley dealt with this season and won 10 straight games with a third-string quarterback. That is, as much as I love Dable, and I think the Giants making the playoffs is something that I did not see in my wildest dreams.
No.
The Shanahan thing.
They were running quarterback sneaks on 3rd and 10 with Mike Glennon. Like, what? This was a year ago.
Geno Smith was showing glimpses last year is my thing about Pete Carroll. I think if Pete Carroll and Geno Smith won the division, I would totally give it to Pete Carroll. But Kyle Shanahan, I'm not a Niners fan. I know a lot of Niners fans. Kyle Shanahan will be punished for his prolonged success. And that's as simply put as I can put it. Because the man won 10 straight games to end the year. They started 3-4. And he lost his starting quarterback by week 3, if I'm correct. Lost his second string quarterback by week 7 or week 10. Maybe week 12.
I'd have to check.
And then he ran a third string quarterback the rest of the way to knock out 10 straight wins. And it's not like they were playing bad teams.
I still would throw in Carroll, given expectations.
He's in the running. It's Shanahan. I love Dable. I think Dable is the most deserving outside of Shanahan. I don't think Sirianni gets it. I think the end of the season was just too lackadaisical for the Eagles. Oh, yeah, 100%. If it was based upon what I said at the start of the season, Pete Carroll would be coach of the year for the next 3 years. Because I thought Seattle was going to win 3 games. What they did this year is absolutely insane.
Given expectations at that point, because the Jaguars had a decent offseason. I think a lot of people kind of throw it away that they overpay Kirk. Yeah, but Kirk was way better than anything they fucking had. So was Zay Jones. Evan Ingram's had a resurgence. Travis Etienne showed up after what's his face went down. James Robinson, or they traded James Robinson.
Yeah. They said, "Nah, you're the captain
said,
now."
"Nah, dog, get out of here." But basically, back to what I was going to say a couple minutes ago. Out of all upsets this weekend, I feel like the Giants have the most likely chance to upset the Vikings because the Vikings played this heart attack type game. They win by 1 score.
For as Dallas is as Dallas does, and what we'll get to with the Cowboys against the Bucs, the Vikings are the most Dallas team outside of the Cowboys. And the Chargers are going to Chargers, so they could be in that same boat because they're snake bitten over the past. But yeah, the Vikings need to get to an early lead and hold it. If they let this game stay close, Saquon Barkley is an elite player that can break off huge plays, and you don't want him to get into the open field.
Ravens, Bengals.
Give me the Bengals.
They were playing for the chance to flip a coin to see who would have home field advantage, but
Joe Mixon kicked the shit out of that coin. He said, "Not today."
And the Ravens showed they didn't give a shit. They did not care.
Is there an award for my least favorite coach this season? Because I'd give it to John Harbaugh. I know he dealt with some insurmountable circumstances, but I still don't understand the Hollywood Brown trade. I'm disappointed in the organization after what they had going, because Lamar's first playoffs was against the Chargers in 2018. We sent him home. And since then, I just have, after Lamar's MVP season, I feel like they just haven't moved forward offensively. And defensively, they're constantly it ebbs and flows. It's good, then it's bad. If he didn't get the Super Bowl, I think we look at Harbaugh in a completely different light. Because Mike Tomlin's a better coach than John Harbaugh, point blank. And I don't know if it's relatively close. I think Tomlin does more with less talent. Yeah. Least favorite is McDaniels.
It's always Josh McDaniels.
That is fair. Yeah. If I had to pick Devin's makeshift manager's least favorite coach of the decade, it's Josh McDaniels. I don't care where he is.
Decade.
Probably the millennia. Yeah, millennia. Dude, after what I saw in Denver, he shouldn't have ever been given the chance to hold a playbook for an NFL offense.
You won a playoff game with Tim Tebow. What do you want about?
Demaryius Thomas won that playoff game. Rest in peace. Tim
True.
Tebow's the guy that threw the pass. It's like John Stockton throwing the ball to Karl Malone. Of course, the dude's
so
an
we're picking
absolute
the
brick
Bengals,
shit.
right?
Yes, we're picking the Bengals.
Yeah.
If Lamar plays, this gets way more complicated. Does Lamar play? I don't think so.
I doubt it.
Lamar goes for 200 yards rushing, the game gets complicated. If Lamar is out there, he is fully healthy, and there is no tape that we've seen over the last like genuinely. I feel like if Lamar suits up, this is going to be me whenever they start showing the broadcast.
NANI?
I'm going to be just looking around like, what is going to happen? Like, Lamar is that electric. But to be fair, I don't think Lamar suits up. Was he even there for that win?
He might not have been. I just honestly picked the last thing I can remember Denver doing outside of Peyton Manning, and I know Josh McDaniels wasn't there for that.
Yeah. The Bengals should win this game by a lot, especially if Lamar Jackson doesn't play. Anthony Brown is not a starting quarterback in the NFL, and neither is Tyler Huntley. It was cool last year whenever they were winning games. The charm wore off. He's not a starter. Welcome to the Cooper Rush fan club where Gardner Minshew, Tyler Huntley, and all of our clipboard kings proudly reside. Speaking of clipboard kings,
we like Cooper Rush on this podcast. Just
Speaking
when you
of
compare him to
clipboard
Dak Prescott is where I get angry.
Hey, dude, if we're going to talk about clipboard kings, it's the matchup of the weekend. It's the Monday Night Football playoff game of this week. We've got Cooper Rush versus Blaine Gabbert, or should I say Kyle Trask?
Dude, I would love that. I would love that so much.
You guys would win.
Let me start this with I hate Monday Night Football for a playoff game. It is a money grab. It is not particularly close. It is stupid. And watch whoever wins get a Saturday game to have even less rest time. It'd be bullshit. It would be terrible. This is dumb, but Troy and Joe wanted one more game. Damn it!
Just win, baby.
Got it. Just win, baby.
Just win, baby. I got you.
Dadgummit.
So, the Dallas Cowboys. How do I put this? We sucked yesterday. We were bad. We put up 6 whole entire American points. Dak Prescott.
Legal tender.
14 for 37. 128.
That's
a
pretty
touchdown
good.
And a pick. And honestly, it probably should have been like 3 picks. But I'm gonna say this, and this could easily be me coping as a Dallas fan. Say whatever you want, but this game didn't mean anything. For one. You could say inconsistent Dak came out. Not particularly close. The Dallas Cowboys, he didn't look in it. Nobody looked in it. The play calling was weird. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going on. It looked like they were trying stuff more than anything. And like I said, that could easily be me coping, and we just didn't fucking show up. And the thing is here, we ran the ball 7 times with Tony Pollard, 5 with Malik Davis, 8 with Zeke. That right there just tells me I don't think we were in this game at any point mentally. You could say if the Giants beat the Eagles, you could have won the division. Okay, the Giants started Davis Webb. Never at any point did I think the game mattered once I heard that. I learned that Saturday morning or Sunday morning when Devin told me, and the game immediately became meaningless because Philadelphia was playing their starters till the very end because they could not afford to fall out of the 1 seed.
If Dallas wanted to win the division, they had to beat Philadelphia the first time around. That was their window to win the division.
Or not lose to Jacksonville or not lose to Green Bay. There was particular losses in the season that mattered and hurt us badly.
But you beat Philadelphia twice. You're in the driver's seat, and you just have to win games. Because it's tough. I think Dallas is in the best position they've been in terms of like their first round of a playoff matchup in years. I know Tampa Bay has relatively owned you guys a couple of times over the last couple of years, and granted, it's not owned you. You guys lost in a shootout to start the year. Last year was the year after the Super Bowl for Tampa Bay, if I'm correct. Yes.
Yeah, the Chris Godwin push off.
And you guys lost again the next time you guys played
this year.
You guys lost to them this year.
We've opened against them 2 years in a row.
It's hard to beat a good team twice, and Tampa is the worst they've looked in about 3 years since like the Jameis days. I think you guys I know Tampa is dangerous, and I understand that it's not ideal to play Tom Brady in the first round. I'd much rather play the Bucks than the Niners. You learned what happens whenever you play Kyle Shanahan in the first round last year. You get what I'm saying. I will take Tom Brady in the first round. And if the Cowboys, it's symbolic. You guys have to get over this hill. You guys just haven't been able to win playoff games in the first round.
We definitely don't have to. We should, but we could just stay in our lowly selves and keep losing first round. Here's kind of where I'm at with this.
Yeah.
There is 2 players that I think will make or need to make the biggest impact for their team for it to matter the most. For the Dallas Cowboys, it's Mike Parsons. He's going to be rushing the side that Tristan Wirfs is not on, because Tristan Wirfs is the best right tackle in the game. Not particularly close, but this line outside of Tristan Wirfs is beaten to hell. And Tom Brady has faced the most pressure he has in his entire career. So this is the time where he needs to face pressure and force him to make bad throws. Okay.
Yeah.
But I said it when we played against Philly and Gardner Minshew. Our biggest problem is going to be big plays. And I don't know who Trayvon Diggs is covering. He could cover Evans. He could cover Godwin. And I wouldn't mind either or, because those are 1A and 1B on that team. They're 2 insanely good wide receivers. But whoever isn't getting covered by Trayvon Diggs, because Trayvon Diggs has been a better coverage cornerback than he was last year, because he was more of an opportunist last year, hence why he had 12 picks. But that's a reason why he doesn't have 12 picks this year, because he has seemingly gone for it less. My biggest concern is the other guy getting big plays, because we just don't have another guy that I'm confident in covering wide receivers, and we're gonna give up big plays, and that's gonna be after watching Mike Evans absolutely annihilate Carolina, who's to say he just doesn't do that again? That's my biggest fear going into Monday night. We're going to have to throw the ball. We're facing one of the best run defenses in the league.
Yeah.
So Dak needs to get it together, but I'm not going to make it easy and be like, oh, Dak Prescott has to be good. No duh.
This game is going to be won through the air regardless of what's happening, because the Bucks rushing the Bucks run blocking is garbage. Their linemen have been their offensive line has been patchwork at best this entire year. Wirfs has been out. They missed 2 of their starting linemen before the year even started. So Tampa, I'm not going to say they're down for the count, but this is whenever I say this is the best opportunity Dallas has had to make it to the divisional round in a while, I mean it wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. Dallas should win this football game. Your defense is good enough to get to Brady. Micah Parsons could blow this game up. Trayvon Diggs could make advantageous plays. And if you get into the red zone, you have the bodies to break through that rushing defense. You can get creative. Kellen Moore has been able to unlock some plays for you guys. And I just think Tampa's, I'm not saying they're done, but I just think the juice is gone. Whatever they had over the last couple of years, I don't know if it got sucked out of them whenever Arians left, or if it was the deep Cooper Kupp catch. The team just doesn't have what they had 2 years ago. And to be fair, You're asking a 45-year-old man to catch lightning in a bottle for the umpteenth time. It's hard to do. And who knows? You don't count Brady out until it hits 0 and his team's lost. So I'm not going to bet on the Bucks to lose, but I would be very surprised if Dallas can't beat the Bucks this Monday.
Yeah.
Because if they can't, then you're going to have to look internally, because you just gave Dak record-setting money. He is the quarterback of the future, and I get McCarthy, but I think it's basically everything. I think you have to reevaluate the whole damn thing, because how good can you be?
One of the biggest problems, obviously, is Dak has thrown way more interceptions than he has in his career. He's way more inaccurate than he was in his entire career. He's less conservative. But it really shows, and we've seen it. We've seen how many balls that have hit receivers' hands and turned into picks. It's a lot. It's like 6 or 7 interceptions that probably should have been catches. It led to the Jacksonville loss. It happened against the Titans on, a couple Thursdays ago. It it really goes to show how much Amari Cooper meant to this team. Now,
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb is a monster. I love CeeDee Lamb. It's an insane pick when we got him. You know, the fact that the Raiders took Henry Ruggs and we were able to get CeeDee Lamb. Now, I'm not saying I'm not bagging on the Raiders or anything. The Raiders made a fine pick. Henry Ruggs just made poor life decisions, and that's nobody's fault outside of Henry Ruggs.
107 receptions.
That's just the way it's gone for the Raiders. But 107 receptions. So who's next? It honestly might be Dalton Schultz. And that's just not. If it's Travis Kelce, I get it. But Dalton Schultz is not Travis Kelce. So who are you looking up?
I'm looking at who you guys can take in the draft this year.
Oh. So Noah Brown had 43 receptions this year. And let's see. Dalton Schultz had 57. I think he's the next guy on the list in terms of receptions. And that's not going to get it done. It's just not. I like Dalton Schultz. He's gone this year. That's just the way it goes for the Raiders now. Yeah, unfortunately. But it's just that Dalton Schultz is not the second receiver of this team. He's a tight end safety blanket. And we can't rely on Noah Brown. Michael Gallup was supposed to be the number 2, but he really doesn't get targeted a whole lot. He's not open a whole lot. Amari Cooper created separation, and that's what Dak really needed the most. It just goes to show how badly that hurt us, and I really don't know. We almost kind of have to take an offensive lineman round 1 and maybe hope to get a good wide receiver in the draft. Maybe second or third round, but that's why I don't have a lot of confidence. I don't know if CeeDee Lamb gets shut down. He's really the only guy that can win us the game outside of the quarterback.
Yeah. This is definitely a game where you wish you had Amari Cooper, but this is why you paid Dak Prescott. This is why Zeke gets paid good money. This is why you have Mike McCarthy as your coach, and it's why you kept Dan Quinn. This is the time where the money's been spent and the product has to finally materialize, because you are not going to get a better first-round matchup than Tampa Bay under their current situation. Like as plainly as I can put it, this is the best matchup Dallas could have gotten coming into the playoffs. You might not feel the best about it. Besides the New York Giants, this was the best bet they could have gotten. Niners, I don't think you can beat them right now. Any Sunday, you can beat anybody, but the Niners, 9 times out of 10, I think, are beating anybody in the NFC. Eagles is close. The Niners are the best team in the NFC. They're pacing it for me right now.
We could beat Minnesota again.
You could beat Minnesota for sure. You could beat the Giants, but in the same vein, they could also beat you. But Tampa's down and out. They didn't even finish above 500. They were losing games to teams that they had no business playing down to. All you have to do is not beat yourself, because against the Niners, you effectively beat yourself last year. If Dallas can play their game and get to a lead and control the ball, they should win this football game.
Yep. Well, it'll be going while we go next week. So we'll be about roughly like 2 quarters into the game, about halftime by the time you and I start recording. So you'll get my live reactions to see if the game's anywhere close whatsoever. So you might be seeing a lot of this next week because I'll just be terrified. But hopefully we just get blown out and I don't have to pay attention.
And if I'm not on stream, that means the Chargers blew a crazy lead or we just lost outright.
Daggone
it. Me after the 4th quarter.
Daggone
it. Oh, Phillip Rivers. Okay.
Oh, man.
We're going to get on out of here. I want to just thank everyone for hanging out. Saw plenty of people coming out throughout the night. So we'll be doing mostly playoff content through the rest of January as we get our dynasty rankings together and all that. So once the Super Bowl is over, be on the lookout for a lot of fantasy content until we get closer to the draft. We'll probably do 2 weeks of draft content, maybe do some draft profiles and then the mock draft itself. Maybe even talk about the draft the week after. So we could talk about the draft for like 2 or 3 weeks. But then we have a lot of downtime. We have a lot of downtime in June and July and even August. So that's going to be a lot of fantasy content, a lot of fantasy 101 if you're just getting into fantasy football, a lot of dynasty, guys who you should target in the offseason before or after your rookie drafts, who you should take in rookie drafts after the draft if you haven't had your rookie draft yet. There's a lot of stuff coming up to fill in the gaps between now and week 1 of next season. So follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, subscribe. And like on YouTube. It's all right below Devin. All right there for you. We made it easy. Everything's the same. You don't have to go searching. So subscribe, turn on the bell for every time we go live. We'll be here every Monday night. Things might change because we might get different jobs and different responsibilities, but we are always going to be here once a week. We can guarantee you that, and we will fire it off on Twitter when we're going to be live. So follow us there to stay update.
Yep. Rain, sleet,
Devin.
or shine, we are going to make the time. Appreciate everybody for riding along with us for this fantasy season. If you want a championship, congratulations. We look forward to the off season. It's a lot easier to make content in the off season. It's not as reactionary. We're able to kind of formulate and parse out takes in a way that's more organic and a little less just the world is ending. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and thank you to everybody that's going to tune in. Shout out the TCU Horned Frogs. You tried 65-7, the final in the national championship.
My Lord.
The Georgia Bulldogs, they got that dog in them. But that's it from me. If that's all you got, Austin, I think we're going to send them off with the word of the day.
Baraka, always appreciate you hanging out with us on Monday nights as well when you're here. Appreciate it. Always enjoy.
Until next week, my friends.
Peace.